Close your eyes. The past is about to speak. When you think of the Edwardian era, you might imagine elegant ladies with parasols strolling through manicured gardens, or perhaps men in fine tweed suits enjoying a leisurely afternoon of sport. It's an image of a long, golden summer afternoon, a time of peace, prosperity, and progress, immortalized in countless novels and films. It's a world of grand country estates, the hum of the first motor cars, and the quiet confidence of an empire at its peak. But that, of course, is the highlight reel, the story of the very fortunate few. For the vast majority of people living in 1905, especially on a small, windswept farm in a place like Devonshire, that reality was a world away. Their existence was not one of garden parties, but of grueling, repetitive labor. Their greatest concern was not social etiquette, but the simple, brutal mathematics of survival. You, with your insulated walls and your thermostat set to a precise temperature, would likely consider this life a form of cruel and unusual punishment. The fight wasn't for status. It was a fight against the cold, against hunger, and against the crushing indifference of the elements. It's a history that whispers you to sleep not with tales of grandeur, but with the steady, quiet rhythm of endurance. So let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always a quiet pleasure to see how far these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you are aware of is not a sound, but a feeling. It is the cold. It is not a gentle chill or the crispness of an autumn morning. This is a deep, predatory cold that has seeped through the stone walls of the farmhouse, through the wooden floorboards, and even through the thick pile of blankets and quilts that are your only shield against it. It is an active presence in the small, dark room. You lie perfectly still, a prisoner in your own bed, hoarding the small pocket of warmth your body has generated through the night. To move is to invite the cold in, to disturb the delicate truce you have established. Your eyes are open, but there is little to see. The window is a pale gray rectangle against the inky blackness, its glass a beautiful, cruel tapestry of frost. No light pollution taints the sky here. The darkness is absolute, a thick, velvety blanket that muffles the world. The only sound is the low, mournful sigh of the wind as it presses against the house, seeking out every tiny crack and crevice. It's a lonely sound, a constant reminder of the vast, cold emptiness that surrounds your small island of existence. You can feel the vibration of it through the bed frame, a deep, resonant hum. You take a slow, cautious breath, and the air stings the back of your throat. You watch as your exhalation plumes in front of your face, a ghostly white cloud that hangs in the air for a moment before dissolving. It is so cold in this room that your own breath becomes a visible thing. On the small washstand beside your bed, a heavy ceramic pitcher and basin wait. You know, without having to look too closely, that the water in that pitcher has a thin, crackled sheet of ice across its surface. The thought of splashing that water on your face is so appalling it feels like a form of madness. This is the reality of a winter morning in 1905. There is no gentle awakening. There is no thermostat to nudge upwards, no heated floors to welcome your feet. There is only this stark, brutal confrontation with the elements. Historians continue to debate the exact mortality rates attributed directly to winter conditions in rural areas. Official records would often list pneumonia, influenza, or other respiratory illnesses as the cause of death, but they rarely noted the contributing factor: the relentless, energy-sapping cold that weakened the body's defenses, turning a common illness into a fatal one. The cold was the silent partner in so many of the year's sorrows. You know you cannot stay here forever. The day's demands are already pressing in on you, a silent list of chores that will not wait. The fire needs to be lit. The animals need to be fed and watered. Your own body needs fuel to face the labor ahead. But leaving the sanctuary of this bed is an act of supreme willpower. It is the first, and perhaps the most difficult battle of the day. A common belief, a holdover from the previous century, was that sleeping in a frigid room was actually good for you. It was thought to build character, to promote a certain hardiness and vigor, to harden the constitution against illness. It was a convenient philosophy, one that made a virtue out of a necessity for most. But it meant that even in homes that could afford more heating, bedrooms often remained unheated by choice. The embrace of the cold was seen as a sign of a strong, unfussy nature. You, however, are not feeling particularly vigorous right now. You are feeling the profound, cellular dread of a body about to be plunged into a hostile environment. There is no more delaying. You count to 3 in your head, a small, private ritual. On 3, you throw the heavy layers back in one swift, decisive movement. The shock is immediate and absolute. The cold hits your skin like a physical blow, sharp and stinging. Every nerve-ending screams in protest. Goosebumps erupt across your arms and back. You don't hesitate. To pause now would be to lose the war. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and your bare feet meet the floorboards. The shock travels up your legs, a jolt so intense it feels like stepping into icy water. The wood is so cold it feels sticky, as if it's trying to steal the very warmth from the soles of your feet. You move quickly, a frantic, shivering dance in the gloom. Your goal is the simple wooden chair in the corner where your clothes are laid out. They are not warm. They are stiff with the same damp cold that permeates everything in the room. This isn't a simple act of getting dressed. It is the act of arming yourself, of putting on your armor for the day. And as you stand there, shivering uncontrollably in the pre-dawn darkness, you understand that survival here is not about grand gestures. It is about small, difficult victories. And this simple act of leaving your bed to face the cold is the first victory of the day. You have answered the morning's challenge. You are awake. You are standing. The day has begun. You fumble in the near darkness, your fingers numb and clumsy. The clothes on the chair are a familiar, stiff pile. There's no thought of fashion or appearance. This is purely about function, about creating a barrier between your skin and the hostile air. The first layer is the most important, and in many ways the most unpleasant. It is a set of long underwear, or combinations as they are often called. A one-piece garment of heavy, off-white wool that covers you from your neck to your wrists and ankles. The wool is coarse, scratchy, and carries a faint, persistent scent of lanolin and old wood smoke. It has been worn for several days. A common practice when laundering clothes is a monumental, all-day chore involving boiling water over an open fire. There's no modern deodorant, no fabric softener, just the raw animal reality of the garment. You pull it on, and the cold, stiff fabric is a fresh shock against your skin. But you know that in a few minutes, your body heat will be trapped within its fibers, forming the foundational layer of warmth. Next comes a shirt made of flannel or a heavy cotton twill, buttoned up to the neck. It too is cold to the touch. Over this, you pull on a thick, hand-knitted woolen pullover. The stitches are tight and dense, the yarn oily with natural lanolin, which helps to repel moisture. This garment is your personal furnace, a heavy, substantial piece of armor. Its weight is a comfort, a tangible defense against the cold. Your trousers are made of corduroy or heavy serge, a type of durable woolen fabric. They are stiff and unyielding, designed for work, not comfort. You pull them on, fastening them with braces or suspenders, as they are not tailored for a snug fit but to allow for movement and another layer of clothing underneath if needed. Finally, you reach for your socks. These are perhaps the most crucial item of all. They are thick, hand-knitted wool, darned and redarned in several places around the heel and toe. The art of darning was not a quaint hobby. It was an essential survival skill. A hole in a sock could lead to a blister, which could become infected. And in an age before antibiotics, a simple infection could escalate into a life-threatening problem. You pull them on, feeling the familiar texture of the mended patches. They come up almost to your knees, and you carefully smooth them out, ensuring there are no wrinkles that could chafe or rub during the long day of walking and working. You are now swaddled in multiple layers of wool and heavy cotton. Your movement is slightly restricted, your body encased in a bulky, scratchy cocoon. There's no sleek thermal technology here, no lightweight, breathable fabrics. This is insulation by sheer mass. You can feel your own body heat beginning to be reflected back at you, a tiny, precious bubble of warmth forming around you. The shivering begins to subside, replaced by a grim sense of readiness. Historians often point out that the Edwardian reliance on wool was absolute. It was warm even when damp, incredibly durable and naturally fire-resistant, a vital quality in a world lit and heated by open flames. While the wealthy could afford finer merino wools, you and the vast majority of the population wore coarse, hardy wools shorn from local sheep breeds, a fabric that was as much a part of the landscape as the granite tors and gorse bushes. Your boots wait by the door. They are heavy leather caked with the dried mud of yesterday's labors. They are not lined with fleece or any soft material. You push your feet into them, the leather stiff and cold. Lacing them up is a slow process with your still numb fingers. You have to pull the leather laces tight, ensuring a snug fit to support your ankles on uneven, frozen ground. The boots are not just footwear, they are tools. The thick soles protect you from sharp stones and frozen clods of earth, and the stout leather offers some protection from the hooves of a careless cow or horse. You are almost ready to leave the room. You take a moment, a brief pause. You can hear the rest of the small farmhouse beginning to stir. The faint sound of a cough from another room, the creak of a floorboard overhead. The house itself seems to be groaning under the immense pressure of the cold. You look again at the frost-covered window. The intricate, feathery patterns are a form of natural art, a beautiful and deadly filigree painted by the night. It's a strange paradox that something so dangerous can be so beautiful. A quirky tidbit of the time is the cottage industry that sprang up around frost ferns. Enterprising photographers would capture these delicate ice crystal patterns on glass plates and sell them as postcards or artistic prints, turning a symptom of a poorly insulated home into a commodity. People in cozy London flats could marvel at the beauty of the frost without ever having to feel its bite. Your final act in the bedroom is to place a heavy, folded quilt at the bottom of the bed, over the blankets. This is a bed rug, an old but practical trick to add another layer of insulation for the coming night. It seems a futile gesture now, with the whole day to get through, but it is an act of hope, a preparation for the eventual return to this cold sanctuary. You are not just dressing for the day. You are participating in a timeless ritual of survival, a series of small, deliberate actions passed down through generations. Each layer of clothing, each tightly tied bootlace, is a testament to human resilience. It is an acknowledgement of the power of the winter and a quiet, stubborn refusal to be defeated by it. You are armed. Now you can face the day. You open the bedroom door and step out into the even colder hallway, the next stage of the morning's battle awaiting you. The air here is thick with the scent of cold stone and the faint, stale smell of yesterday's cooking. The real work is about to begin. You make your way from the hallway, your heavy boots making a dull, solid sound on the worn flagstones of the floor. The chill in the main living space, the kitchen, is somehow damper and more profound than in the bedroom you just left. This is the heart of the house, but right now, its heart is cold and still. Your destination is the great cast-iron kitchen range, a hulking black beast that squats against the main wall, its nickel-plated details dull and lifeless in the gloom. This is more than just a stove. It is the central heating, the water heater, and the oven all in one. In the winter, its fire is rarely allowed to die completely. To let it go out would be a catastrophe, requiring a colossal amount of effort to relight from scratch in the morning. Your first and most critical task is to resurrect the slumbering embers from last night. You kneel on the cold stone hearth. The air smells of soot, old ashes, and the metallic tang of cold iron. There is no switch to flip, no pilot light to ignite. This is a manual, intimate process that requires patience and skill. First, you must open the small iron door of the firebox. Using a small, stout poker, you gently probe the bed of ashes from the previous day. This is a delicate operation. You are searching for the warm, living heart of the fire, the small cluster of embers that you so carefully banked last night. You have to be gentle, clearing away the dead, gray ash without extinguishing the precious heat that remains. A faint, promising warmth radiates from the core. You can see a few tiny, pulsing red eyes glowing deep within the pile. This is the seed of today's warmth, the fragile hope upon which the comfort of the entire day depends. Now, you must feed it. Beside the hearth is a small scuttle filled with kindling, slivers of dry wood, tightly rolled spills of old newspaper, and a handful of pine cones you gathered in the autumn. You select a few of the driest, most delicate pieces. You carefully place them around the glowing embers, creating a small, airy structure, a little nest for the flame to be born in. You don't just dump them in. You arrange them with the precision of a surgeon, ensuring there is enough space for air to circulate. Without oxygen, the embers will suffocate and die. Now for the bellows. This is a simple, hourglass-shaped device of wood and leather. You place the nozzle into the small opening of the firebox, pointing it directly at the heart of your kindling nest. You begin to pump. A wheezing sigh comes from the leather as you squeeze the handles together, directing a puff of air onto the embers. At first, nothing seems to happen. You pump again, a steady, rhythmic pulse. A tiny wisp of smoke, thin and gray, curls up from the kindling. A good sign. You continue pumping, your arms already beginning to ache from the awkward, crouched position. The glowing red of the embers brightens and a few sparks dance upwards. You lean closer, your face near the opening, feeling the first hints of real heat. The smell of the pine cones begins to release, a sharp, resinous scent that cuts through the stale air. A small, tentative tongue of yellow flame flickers into existence, licks at a piece of kindling and then vanishes. You don't stop. You keep pumping the bellows with that same steady rhythm. And then it happens. A proper flame catches, wavering at first, then growing stronger, more confident. It wraps itself around the kindling, and a soft, rushing sound fills the silence. It is the sound of life, of heat, of hope. You can pause for a moment, but the job is not done. The kindling will burn out quickly. You must now add larger pieces of wood. You have a stack of dry, split logs ready by the hearth. You carefully open the firebox door again, and using a small pair of tongs, you add 2 or 3 logs, placing them carefully over the now roaring kindling fire. You arrange them in a way that allows air to flow between them, building a stable structure of fuel that will catch and burn steadily. Finally, you add a few lumps of coal from a metal hod. The coal will provide the long-lasting, intense heat needed to warm the room and heat the massive iron range itself. Historians still argue about the precise moment coal fully supplanted wood as the primary domestic fuel in rural Britain. While cities had long relied on it, many farming communities like yours existed in a hybrid state, using wood for quick, hot flames and coal for sustained background heat, a pragmatic approach born of availability and cost. You close the firebox door, and now you adjust the dampers. These are small levers that control the flow of air into the fire and the flow of smoke up the chimney. Getting the balance right is an art form. Too much air and the fire will burn too quickly, wasting precious fuel. Too little, and it will smolder and fill the room with smoke. You listen to the sound of the fire, a deep, rumbling draw that tells you the chimney is pulling well. A fact often overlooked is the sheer danger of these ranges. A poorly maintained or blocked flue could easily lead to a chimney fire, or, more insidiously, to carbon monoxide poisoning, a silent killer that claimed many lives. Every family understood the importance of keeping the chimney swept. The massive cast iron body of the range begins to absorb the heat. It will be a while before the top is hot enough to cook on or the oven is up to temperature. But already, a small circle of warmth is radiating out from it. You stand up, your knees cracking in protest, and stretch your back. You hold your hands out towards the stove, feeling the blessed heat begin to penetrate the chill in your bones. The numbness in your fingers starts to recede, replaced by a tingling ache. The kitchen is still cold, but it is no longer a dead, static cold. It is a cold in retreat. You have performed the morning's most vital ritual. You have brought the fire back to life. The heart of the home is beating once more, and with it, the promise of a hot drink, a warm meal, and a small victory against the overwhelming power of the winter. With the range now rumbling and beginning to radiate a serious, life-sustaining heat, your attention turns from creating warmth to consuming energy. The day ahead is one of hard physical labor, and your body requires fuel just as surely as the fire does. Breakfast in this world is not a leisurely affair, not a time for conversation or contemplating the day. It is a strictly functional, calorie-driven necessity. There are no brightly colored boxes of cereal in the pantry, no choice of juices or pastries. There is one staple, the bedrock of the rural British diet for centuries: porridge. You move to the larder, a small, cold room off the kitchen. The air inside is frigid, which is precisely its purpose. It is your refrigerator. On a stone shelf, you find the sack of oats. These are not the rolled, instant oats of the future. These are coarse, pinhead oats, minimally processed, full of fiber and grit. You scoop a generous amount into a large, heavy-bottomed pot. From a jug, you add water, and from a small ceramic jar, a hefty pinch of salt. Salt is not just for flavor. Your body will lose it through sweat during the day's work, and it needs to be replenished. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of modern foodies that historical peasant food was bland. It was often simply seasoned, but the use of salt, foraged herbs, and occasionally a precious peppercorn was a carefully considered practice. The food wasn't bland, it was fuel, and it was seasoned for purpose. You carry the heavy pot to the range and place it on the flat top, finding the spot that is hot but not yet scorching. Now begins the slow, methodical process of stirring. You cannot just leave the pot to boil. The coarse oats would stick to the bottom and burn, ruining the entire precious meal. So you stand by the stove, a long wooden spoon called a spurtle in some parts of the country in your hand, and you stir. Round and round, a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The kitchen is still dim, lit only by the flickering light from the firebox and the gray dawn beginning to filter through the window. The only sound is the murmur of the fire and the gentle, scraping sound of your spoon against the bottom of the pot. This is a moment of quiet contemplation, almost a form of meditation. As you stir, the kitchen slowly, almost imperceptibly, warms around you. The chill recedes from the center of the room. You can feel the warmth on your face and hands as you lean over the stove. The porridge begins to thicken, the water absorbed by the oats, turning from a soupy liquid into a thick, bubbling mass. The smell is plain, earthy, and deeply comforting. It is the smell of sustenance. You watch the texture change, the bubbles growing fat and slow, a sign that it is almost ready. You don't have a timer. You know it's done by the look, the feel, the smell. senses honed by years of repeating this same task every single morning. Once the porridge reaches the desired consistency, a thick, substantial paste that could hold a spoon upright, you remove it from the heat. You ladle a large, steaming portion into a simple earthenware bowl. There is no fruit, no nuts, no cinnamon to sprinkle on top. There is one luxury, one concession to flavor, and that is a small drizzle of black treacle. You retrieve the tin of treacle from the larder. It is thick and dark, moving with a slow, reluctant ooze in the cold air. You pour a dark, sticky ribbon of it over the hot porridge. The treacle is not just for sweetness. It is a concentrated burst of sugar, a quick source of energy that your muscles will crave in the hours to come. You take your bowl to the small wooden table in the center of the room. You sit on a hard, straight-backed chair. The act of eating is quick and efficient. You don't savor each mouthful. You shovel the hot, sticky mass into your mouth, feeling the intense heat and the simple, satisfying weight of it in your stomach. The porridge is blandly grainy, the saltiness a background note, and the treacle provides a dark, almost bitter sweetness. It is not delicious in the modern sense. You wouldn't find this on a brunch menu with a clever name, but it is profoundly satisfying. It is filling, it is warm, and you can feel the energy from it almost immediately, a spreading warmth that starts in your core and moves outwards. There's no time to sit and digest. You finish the bowl in a matter of minutes, scrape it clean with your spoon, and stand up. The washing up is just as simple. You take the pot and bowl to the stone sink. There is no hot water tap. The hot water comes from a large kettle that you filled with water last night and placed on the stove when you first lit the fire. It is now steaming. You pour a small amount of the precious hot water into the sticky pot, using a coarse brush to scrub the oat residue from the sides. You use no soap for this, as soap is a carefully rationed commodity, reserved for laundry and personal washing. The hot water is enough. You rinse the bowl and spoon and place them on a wooden rack to dry. Every drop of hot water is valuable, a product of fuel and effort, and not a drop is wasted. The entire process of making, eating, and cleaning up after breakfast has taken less than 30 minutes. It was a purely functional act. A quirky and rather grim fact about the Edwardian diet for the rural poor is what nutritionists today call its calorific efficiency. While lacking in many vitamins, it was incredibly high in carbohydrates and fats, designed to provide the maximum possible energy for a body engaged in constant, strenuous physical activity. An office worker today would grow fat on such a diet, but for you, it is the bare minimum required to function. You have fueled the engine. Now the real work begins. You can feel the warmth in your belly, a stark contrast to the still chilly air on your face. You are ready to face the outside world. The animals are waiting. With the internal fire stoked by porridge and the kitchen fire beginning to tame the chill of the farmhouse, it is time to face the main adversary, the world outside the door. You pull on a heavy, waxed cotton jacket that has been hanging on a hook by the door. It is stiff with cold and smells of earth and animals. You place a wool cap firmly on your head, pulling it down over your ears, and finally, you wrap a coarse woolen scarf around your neck, tucking the ends into your jacket. Your hands, which had just begun to feel warm, are thrust into thick leather gloves. This is your uniform for the outdoors, an additional layer of armor against the biting wind. You unlatch the heavy wooden back door. As you pull it open, the wind snatches at it, and a blast of frigid air invades the relative sanctuary of the kitchen, swirling around your legs and sending a cascade of ash puffing from the front of the range. You have to put your shoulder into the door to close it again behind you, the latch catching with a solid, definitive sound. You are outside. The change is breathtakingly abrupt. The cold is a living entity out here, armed with a wind that feels as if it is made of microscopic needles. It finds every tiny gap in your clothing, the space between your glove and your sleeve, the opening of your collar. The light is still a weak, watery gray, the sun not yet having cleared the horizon. The world is rendered in shades of gray, white, and brown. The farmyard is a treacherous landscape of frozen, rutted mud. Every puddle is a sheet of dirty ice, and the ground is as hard as iron. You walk carefully, your heavy boots providing a solid grip, your body braced against the wind's relentless assault. Your first responsibility is to the livestock. Their survival, their health, is inextricably linked to your own. The small herd of dairy cows provides milk, which means cream, butter, and cheese, calories, and income. The pigs will become bacon and ham, salted and preserved to last through the lean months. The chickens provide eggs, a daily source of protein. Letting them suffer is not an option. It is a form of self-harm. You make your way towards the cowshed, a long, low building of stone and timber. The air is thick with the warm, sweet, and pungent smell of cattle and hay. It is a strangely comforting smell, a scent of life and earthy warmth that contrasts sharply with the sterile cold of the outdoors. You slide open the heavy wooden door, and a chorus of low, impatient sounds greets you. The cows are awake and waiting. They are tethered in their stalls, their breath pluming in the chilly air of the shed. While it is warmer in here than outside, protected from the wind, the temperature is still only a few degrees above freezing. You can see your own breath as clearly in here as you could in your bedroom. You move down the line, giving each cow a quick pat and a soft word. You are not sentimental about these animals in the way a modern pet owner might be, but you have a deep, practical respect for them. They are your partners in this enterprise of survival. Your first task is to provide them with fodder. At the end of the shed is the hayrick, a tightly packed stack of the sweet-smelling dried grass you and your family spent weeks cutting, drying, and stacking in the late summer. The hay is the farm's savings account, a store of summer sunshine converted into winter sustenance. Using a pitchfork, you pull down dense clumps of the fragrant hay. It is hard work. The hay is tightly compressed, and you have to drive the fork in with force, using your body weight to pry a section loose. You carry the heavy bundles to each cow's manger, flakes of hay and dust swirling in the air, catching in the weak light from your lantern. The cows begin to eat immediately, the sound of their rough tongues and grinding teeth filling the shed. It is a good, productive sound. Next, you must clean the stalls. This is a non-negotiable part of the daily routine. A buildup of manure and wet bedding can lead to disease, particularly hoof rot, which can lame a cow and render it useless. Using a shovel and a stiff broom, You scrape the soiled straw and manure into a wheelbarrow. The work is physically demanding, your muscles straining against the heavy, wet mixture. Steam rises from the manure, a product of its decomposition. This is not waste. You will wheel this barrow out to the midden heap, a carefully managed pile of manure and bedding that will rot down over the months, becoming farmyard gold, a rich, natural fertilizer that will be spread on the fields in the spring to ensure a good harvest. The cycle of life, death, and decay is a closed, efficient loop on this farm. Nothing is wasted. After clearing the stalls, you lay down a fresh layer of clean, dry straw. The straw provides a clean bed and insulation from the cold stone floor. A common misconception is that farm animals in the past were simply left to fend for themselves in brutal conditions. While some certainly were, a well-managed farm like the one you are running understood a fundamental truth. Animal comfort translates directly to productivity. A cold, stressed cow will produce less milk. A pig living in filth is more prone to disease. Caring for the animals was not an act of kindness. It was an act of sound economic and agricultural practice. You are a steward, and your diligence pays dividends in milk yields and healthy offspring. You move from the cowshed to the pigsty, and then to the chicken coop, repeating the rituals of feeding and cleaning. The pigs greet you with loud, demanding squeals, their powerful snouts jostling for position at the trough as you pour in their slop, a mixture of kitchen scraps, soured milk, and boiled vegetable peelings. The chickens flutter and cluck as you scatter their grain and check the nesting boxes for the day's first eggs. Their small, warm bodies, a surprising delight to find in the cold straw. Each egg is a small, perfect treasure, carefully placed in a basket. The sun has now risen, but it offers little comfort. It is a pale, distant disk in a white sky, providing light but almost no warmth. The wind has not lessened. You stand for a moment in the middle of the yard, the morning's first round of animal chores complete. Your body is warm now, heated by the exertion. You can feel a light sheen of sweat under your many layers of wool. But the moment you stop moving, the cold begins to creep back in. There is no time to rest. The animals have been fed, but their water troughs are still frozen solid. The next battle awaits. The animals have food in their bellies, but their thirst is a more immediate and difficult problem to solve. Water is life, but in the depths of a Devonshire winter, it becomes a solid, unyielding enemy. Your next task is one of pure, brute force, breaking the ice. You make your way to the large stone trough in the middle of the farmyard, the primary water source for the cows when they are let out of the shed later in the day. The water within it is frozen solid, not just a thin sheet on top, but a thick, opaque block of ice several inches deep. Beside the trough, leaning against the stone wall, is the tool for this specific job. A heavy iron bar, almost as tall as you are, with a flattened, wedge-like tip. It is brutally simple and brutally effective. You pick it up. The iron is so cold that it feels like it is burning your gloved hands, and its weight is considerable. This is not a task for the faint of heart. You position yourself at the edge of the trough, plant your feet firmly on the frozen ground, and take a deep breath. You raise the heavy bar high over your head, your arms and back muscles straining with the effort. For a moment, you hold it there, a silhouette against the pale morning sky. Then, with all your strength, you bring it down onto the center of the trough. The impact creates a dull, heavy thud, a sound that is absorbed by the ice rather than echoing. A web of white fracture lines radiates out from the point of impact, but the surface remains largely intact. It's like hitting solid rock. There is no quick victory here. This is a battle of attrition. You lift the bar again, and again, and again. You fall into a rhythm, a steady, punishing cadence of lift, pause, and strike. Your breathing becomes labored, pluming in front of your face in great white clouds. The wind whips at you, trying to steal your breath and sap your strength. Each impact sends a jarring shock up your arms and into your shoulders. This is the kind of repetitive, physically taxing labor that defines your existence. There is no machine to do this for you, no clever trick. There is only you, the iron bar, and the stubborn resistance of the frozen water. Slowly, painstakingly, you begin to make progress. The fracture lines deepen. Small shards of ice break free, skittering across the surface. Then, with one particularly forceful blow, a large section of the ice gives way with a sharp cracking sound, revealing the dark, frigid water beneath. You have broken through, but a small hole is not enough for several thirsty cows to drink from. You must now work around the edges of the hole, widening it, breaking up the large plates of ice and hauling them out of the trough. You use the bar to lever up huge, heavy slabs of ice. They are surprisingly heavy. You grab them with your gloved hands, the intense cold penetrating the leather almost instantly. You heave them over the side of the trough, where they land with a solid crash on the frozen ground. Your gloves become soaked, and the water on them begins to freeze, making them stiff and even colder. Your fingers ache and burn, but you cannot stop. Historians sometimes discuss the concept of winter work on farms, a category of chores specific to the season. Ice breaking was a universal and dreaded part of this. It was dangerous. A slip could mean a nasty fall or a hand crushed by a slab of ice, and it was utterly exhausting. A lesser-known fact is the toll this kind of work took on the body over time. The constant jarring impacts and heavy lifting contributed to chronic joint pain, arthritis, and back problems that plagued rural populations. The romantic image of the hardy, ruddy-faced farmer often concealed a body worn down by a lifetime of such labor. There was no concept of ergonomics or workplace safety. The job had to be done, and your body was the tool you used to do it. Once you have cleared a large enough area of open water in the main trough, you are not finished. You must repeat the process for the smaller troughs in the pigsty and the chicken run. These are smaller, but the work is no less essential. You leave the heavy iron bar and fetch a tool more suited to the smaller scale, a stout wooden mallet and a cold chisel. You kneel in the muck and straw of the pigsty, chipping away at the ice in their trough, the sharp tapping sound echoing in the confined space. The pigs watch you with their small, intelligent eyes, grunting impatiently. Finally, after what feels like an age, the job is done. Every animal on the farm now has access to drinking water. You stand up straight, your back screaming in protest. Your hands are numb and clumsy in their frozen gloves. You are sweating heavily under your layers, but the moment you stop moving, The icy wind reminds you of its presence. You look at the dark, still water in the troughs. It is a victory, but a temporary one. You know with absolute certainty that by tomorrow morning, it will all be frozen solid again. And you will be out here with your iron bar and your mallet doing the exact same thing. Winter is a war of daily battles, and you have just won this one. You take a moment to lean against the cold stone wall of the cowshed, catching your breath. The pale sun has climbed a little higher in the sky. The world feels immense, empty, and indifferent. It is easy in a moment like this to feel a sense of profound isolation, to feel like a tiny, solitary figure struggling against an overwhelming force. But you are not just fighting for yourself. You are fighting for the animals, for the farm, for the family inside the warm kitchen. Your effort is part of a larger collective struggle, and with that thought, you push yourself off the wall. There is still more to do. The fire in the kitchen will need more fuel soon. The day is still young. The morning's most brutal physical exertions are behind you, but the day's work is far from over. Having provided for the animals, you now turn your attention to the needs of the humans. Your next destination is the kitchen garden, a plot of land behind the farmhouse that in the summer is a riot of green abundance. Now, in the dead of winter, it is a sad, desolate-looking place. The skeletal remains of last summer's beanstalks stand like sentinels, coated in a delicate lacework of frost. The ground is frozen solid, a hard, unforgiving crust of dark earth. It may look barren, but you know that beneath that frozen shell lies a hidden bounty. This is where you will find the hardy root vegetables that form the backbone of your winter diet. Leeks, parsnips, swedes, and turnips. These are not glamorous vegetables. They are dense, earthy, and resilient, capable of surviving in the ground right through the frost, their flavors often sweetened by the cold. There is no supermarket to visit, no greengrocer's stall in a distant town that you can easily access. Your survival depends on what you manage to grow and store from the previous harvest. Your tools for this task are a three-pronged fork and a wooden basket, or trug. You approach a section of the garden where you know the leeks are planted. The first challenge is breaking through the frozen topsoil. You place the tines of the fork on the ground and press down with your boot. It barely makes a dent. You have to put your full weight on it, rocking back and forth until the steel prongs finally bite into the earth with a grating crunch. It's like trying to dig through soft rock. Each pry of the fork requires a grunt of effort, lifting a small, frozen clump of soil. You work your way down the row, slowly and methodically breaking up the ground. It is slow, cold work. Your recently thawed hands, even inside their gloves, quickly become numb again from contact with the frozen earth and the cold steel of the fork. Finally, you have loosened the soil enough to begin harvesting. You reach down and pull, and with a final sucking sound of protest from the frozen ground, a leek comes free. It is a thing of beauty in its own rugged way. The lower part is thick and white, and the upper leaves are a dark, hardy green, stiff with ice. You knock the frozen clumps of dirt from its roots and place it in your trug. You repeat this process again and again, moving from the leeks to the patch where the parsnips are buried. Digging for parsnips is even harder. They grow deep, and you have to be careful not to break them with the fork. You clear the earth around one, then gently lever it up from beneath. It emerges from its frozen tomb, a pale, conical root dusted with soil. You will dig up enough vegetables for the next day or two. There is no point in harvesting more. They store better in the natural refrigerator of the frozen earth than they would in the larder. This practice of storing root vegetables in the ground, known as in situ storage or clamping, was a vital agricultural technique before widespread refrigeration. For certain crops like potatoes and carrots, farmers would dig a shallow pit or clamp, line it with straw, pile the vegetables in a mound, and then cover the whole thing with more straw and a thick layer of earth. This insulated them from the worst of the frost and kept them fresh for months. Your garden is a smaller, more direct version of this principle. You are, in effect, shopping in nature's own pantry. As you work, you pause to check on the kale. A few ragged, curly-leafed plants stand proudly amidst the frost. Kale is another winter miracle, a brassica so tough that its leaves can freeze solid and then thaw, becoming tenderer and sweeter for the experience. You pick a few of the dark, crinkly leaves. They are stiff and brittle in your hands. These will be boiled and added to tonight's supper, a welcome splash of green and a vital source of vitamins that were often scarce in the winter diet. Scurvy wasn't just a disease of sailors. Milder forms of vitamin deficiencies were common in isolated rural communities during the winter, leading to lethargy, sore joints, and poor healing. The humble kale plant was a powerful medicine against it. Your trug is now heavy with your harvest. A bundle of thick leeks, a half-dozen parsnips, and a clutch of kale leaves. It's a meager-looking pile for the amount of effort it took to acquire, but it is enough. It is the raw material for stews, soups, and roasted side dishes that will fill your bellies and keep you going. You look around the desolate garden, at the frozen earth and the gray sky. It is an image of dormancy, of suspended animation. But your basket is proof that there is life here still, a stubborn, quiet persistence waiting for the warmth and light to return. The garden is not dead, merely sleeping. And your work here is a pact with that sleeping life, a promise that you will tend it, and in return, it will sustain you. You carry your heavy basket back towards the farmhouse. The path is slick with patches of ice, and you walk carefully, protecting your precious cargo. The kitchen, with its now roaring fire and the promise of warmth, beckons to you. The sight of the farmhouse, smoke curling steadily from its chimney, is a welcome beacon of shelter and safety in this harsh, frozen landscape. You have fought the earth for its hidden treasures and won. Now, it is time to return to the heart of your small world, to process this bounty and prepare for the next demand on your time and energy. So before this great story continues, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're enjoying our journey together. Your support means the world. You return to the kitchen, the door closing behind you with a reassuring thud, shutting out the relentless wind once more. You set your heavy trug of vegetables on the stone floor. The relative warmth of the room feels like a physical embrace. You take off your stiff, frozen gloves and your cap, placing them on the hearth to dry. The feeling slowly, painfully returns to your fingers, an intense tingling and aching that is the price of their numbness. You hold them out to the range, letting the waves of heat wash over them. But you cannot rest for long. The fire, the magnificent, life-giving fire that you resurrected this morning, is a hungry beast. The initial load of wood and coal is burning down, and the rumbling sound from the firebox is a little less vigorous than it was. The heat in the room, the ability to cook, the hot water in the kettle, it all depends on a constant, steady supply of fuel. Maintaining the fire is not a single task, but an ongoing process that punctuates the entire day. Your next chore is to replenish the fuel stocks by the hearth. The main supply of wood and coal is not kept in the house. It is stored in a dedicated outbuilding, a small shed a short distance from the back door. This is for safety, to minimize the risk of a stray spark igniting the main fuel store and burning the entire farmhouse down. It is also a practical matter of cleanliness, keeping the dust and dirt of the coal and wood outside the living quarters as much as possible. This means that every piece of fuel burned in the range must be physically carried into the house. You brace yourself and step back outside into the cold, this time heading for the fuel shed. Inside, it is dark and smells strongly of coal dust, dry wood, and damp earth. On one side is the coal bunker, a large wooden container holding a dwindling pile of the black, dusty lumps. On the other side, logs of various sizes are stacked neatly against the wall, sorted by size and dryness. This neatness is not for aesthetics. It is a vital part of fuel management. The driest wood, seasoned for a year or more, is kept for starting the fire and for quick, hot burns. The larger, slightly less seasoned logs are for long, slow burns overnight. You pick up the large, heavy-duty coal scuttle, a metal bucket with a handle and a slanted opening. You scoop it deep into the coal bunker, filling it to the brim. The weight is immense. Coal is dense and heavy, and carrying a full scuttle is a serious workout. You lift it, your arm muscles straining, and begin the short but awkward journey back to the house. You have to walk carefully over the frozen, uneven ground, the heavy, unbalanced weight pulling you to one side. You deposit the scuttle on the hearth, the metal making a loud sound on the flagstones. But you are not done. The fire also needs wood. You go back out to the shed and pick up a large canvas log carrier. You load it with split logs, choosing a selection of sizes. The logs are rough, their bark cold and sharp to the touch. This load is lighter than the coal but more awkward, the logs threatening to spill from the carrier. You haul it back into the kitchen and stack the logs neatly in the wood box beside the range. This journey, from kitchen to shed and back again, you will make multiple times a day, every day, all winter long. It is a constant, looping rhythm of depletion and replenishment. Historians poring over farm account books from the Edwardian era are often struck by the sheer expense of fuel. For families who didn't have their own coppice to harvest wood from, coal had to be bought and transported from a local merchant, a significant drain on a family's limited cash resources. Every lump of coal, every log had a real monetary value and was therefore burned with careful consideration. There was no casual turning up of the heat. Every degree of warmth was earned. A quirky and sometimes tragic aspect of this constant quest for fuel was winter gleaning. Just as the poor would glean fallen grain from the fields after the harvest, in winter, children and the elderly would often scavenge for fuel. They would walk for miles along railway lines, picking up small pieces of coal that had fallen from passing steam trains, or search woods and hedgerows for fallen branches and twigs. It was a dangerous and often meager reward for a day's freezing work, but for many, it was the only way to keep a fire going. Now, with the immediate fuel supply replenished, you can tend to the fire itself. You open the firebox door and are met with a blast of intense heat. The coals are glowing a furious, shimmering orange. Using a small shovel, you add a few more lumps of coal, placing them strategically to ensure an even burn. Then you add a couple of logs to the top. The wood will catch and burn, providing bright flames, while the coal bed beneath provides the sustained, radiant heat. You close the door and adjust the damper again, listening for that familiar, satisfying roar. The heat in the kitchen, which had begun to fade slightly, now swells again, more powerful than before. The top of the range is searingly hot, the air above it shimmering. The kettle is singing, a low hum that will soon build to a steady emission of steam. You have fed the beast. You have ensured the continuity of warmth. It is a deeply satisfying feeling, a primal sense of security. In a world of uncertainty, the steady, reliable heat of the fire is a constant. It is the anchor of your day, the center around which all other activities revolve. For now, its hunger is sated. You can turn your mind to the next task, secure in the knowledge that the heart of your home is still beating strong. The pale sun has reached its zenith in the sky, a position that suggests midday but offers no real warmth to the frozen landscape. Your body, fueled by the morning's porridge, is beginning to feel the strain of the constant labor. It is time for the midday meal. Just like breakfast, this is not a social event or a leisurely break. It is a functional refueling stop, a brief truce in the day-long battle against the cold and the farm's demands. The meal itself is a testament to Edwardian thrift and practicality. There is no question of what to have for lunch. You will eat what is available, which is almost always a variation of what you had the day before. On the side of the range, a large, heavy stock pot has been gently simmering all morning. This pot is the engine of the week's meals. It is rarely, if ever, completely emptied. Each day, new ingredients are added to the old, creating a perpetual stew, a constantly evolving broth of flavors. Today, you will fortify it with some of the vegetables you just wrestled from the frozen garden. You take the leeks and parsnips to the stone sink. Using some of the precious hot water from the kettle on the stove, you wash the dirt from them. The water is scaldingly hot, but your hands are so cold that the sensation is a strange mixture of pain and pleasure. You slice the vegetables roughly on a thick wooden board, the knife making a satisfying crunching sound as it goes through the crisp parsnips. You add these to the big pot, along with a handful of the tough kale leaves. You stir it all together, the new ingredients disappearing into the thick, bubbling liquid. The stew's base is likely the leftover broth from a Sunday joint of mutton or pork, supplemented with bones, vegetable scraps, and pearl barley to thicken it and add substance. Yesterday's leftover potatoes, a few stray carrots, an onion, It all goes in. Nothing is wasted. This practice, common across Europe for centuries, is what kept rural families fed. The perpetual stew, or pot-au-feu, as it would be called in a grander kitchen, was a marvel of efficiency. It used the constant, low heat from the side of the range, tenderized tough cuts of meat and vegetables over hours of slow cooking, and provided a hot, nourishing meal on demand. You ladle a steaming bowl of the stew for yourself. The aroma fills the kitchen, a complex, savory scent of meat, root vegetables, and herbs. There might be a sprig of thyme or a bay leaf, salvaged from the summer garden and dried, floating in the broth. You take your bowl and a thick slice of bread to the table. The bread is dense and heavy, with a thick, chewy crust. It's not the light, airy loaf of a modern bakery. It is substantial, designed to fill you up. It may even be slightly stale, but that doesn't matter. Its primary purpose is not to be eaten on its own, but to serve as an edible tool. You do not sit and eat politely with a spoon. You break off a piece of the bread and use it to scoop up the hot stew, soaking up the flavorful broth. This is a common way of eating, saving on washing up and ensuring not a single drop of the precious food is wasted. The stew is hot enough to burn your tongue, but you eat it quickly, blowing on each mouthful. The vegetables are soft and sweet, the small pieces of meat tender, the barley plump and chewy. It is a deeply satisfying meal, uncomplicated and utterly nourishing. The kitchen is the warmest place you have been all day. Sitting here by the roaring range, a hot meal in your belly, is a moment of profound comfort. It is a small island of peace in a sea of labor, but it is a fleeting one. There is no lunch break in the modern sense. You eat until you are full, and then you get back to work. The sun is already beginning its slow descent, and the afternoon is a race against the fading light. There are still many hours of work to be done before you can rest. As you finish your meal, you might hear the distant, mournful sound of a train. It's a lonely sound that emphasizes your isolation, a reminder of the larger, faster world that exists beyond your small farm. A world of cities, factories, and technology that has little bearing on your daily reality. Historians often refer to the Edwardian era as a time of great change and technological advancement. But the diffusion of this progress was incredibly uneven. While a wealthy Londoner might be reading about the latest political scandal in the evening paper, delivered to his door, your connection to the outside world is limited to the weekly market, a rare letter, or the sound of that distant train. Life for you is local, cyclical, and dictated by the seasons, not by headlines. You wipe your bowl clean with the last piece of bread and eat it. You stand up, your body feeling heavy and warm. The temptation to linger in the warmth of the kitchen is immense. But the afternoon's chores are calling. The light will not last forever, and any work that needs to be done outside must be completed before dusk. The brief thaw, the momentary pause in the day's hostilities, is over. It is time to put your armor back on and head back out, or to turn to the indoor tasks that await. The relentless rhythm of the day pulls you forward, away from the comfort of the fire and back to the world of work. With the brief respite of the midday meal over, the afternoon stretches before you, a block of time to be filled with the quieter, but no less essential, indoor tasks. The weather outside is often too brutal or the light too poor for more field work, so this part of the day is dedicated to maintenance, repair, and preparation. This is the embodiment of the waste not, want not philosophy, a mindset that was not a quaint saying but a fundamental principle of survival. Everything you own is valuable, and extending its life through care and repair is a crucial economic activity. You gather your tools for the afternoon's work. By the hearth, in the relatively good light from the window, you set up a small workstation. Today's primary task is mending. You have a small pile of clothes that need attention. A shirt with a torn cuff, a pair of woolen socks with a new hole appearing in the heel, and a heavy work jacket with a seam coming apart under the arm. You retrieve a wooden sewing box. It contains not a rainbow of colored threads, but a few spools of sturdy, practical linen and wool thread in drab colors: black, brown, gray. There are needles of various sizes, a lump of beeswax to strengthen the thread, and a smooth, polished stone used as a darning egg. You start with the socks. Darning is a skill that requires patience and section 10 a good eye. You stretch the hole over the darning stone to create a stable surface. You then meticulously weave new with the brief respite of the midday meal over. The focus shifts from outdoor threads back and forth across the hole, first in one direction, then the other, creating a new patch of fabric from survival to indoor diligence. The afternoon, especially on the most bitterly cold days when extended work outside is unwise, is reserved thread alone. It's slow, intricate work. Your fingers, though clumsy from the cold and hard labor, move for the endless tasks of maintenance and repair. The guiding principle of your household is a simple one, born of necessity, with a practiced familiarity. There is no radio, no television, no podcast to listen to. There is only the quiet waste not, want not. Everything is used, reused, mended, and repurposed until it is utterly beyond salvation's scratch of the needle through the wool and the murmur of the fire. This kind of work was often communal. This is not an environmental slogan. It is the fundamental economic reality of your life. You might settle into a chair near time for the women of the household to sit together, their hands busy while they talked. But even when done in solitude, it is the window to make the most of the weak, fading daylight. The warmth from the range reaches you here, making not idle time. As you work, your mind is busy planning, calculating. How many jars of pickles are left in it, the most comfortable spot in the house for stationary work? Your task for this afternoon is mending. In your lap is a pile the larder. Will the store of potatoes last until the first new potatoes can be dug in late spring? When will of clothes, a pair of work trousers with a worn patch at the knee, a shirt with a torn seam under the arm, and the sow be ready to farrow? Your hands might be engaged in a repetitive task, but your mind is constantly running several pairs of woolen socks, their heels worn thin as paper. Next to you is a wooden sewing box. It contains not the complex algorithms of farm management. After the socks, you move on to the shirt, reinforcing the cuff with small, delicate silks and fine needles, but spools of thick, sturdy thread, patches cut from old, irreparable garments, a block neat stitches. Then the heavy jacket, which requires a strong needle and waxed thread to push through the thick fabric. repair of beeswax for strengthening the thread, and a collection of needles of various sizes. You pick up the trousers first. Using in clothes was not just about saving money. It was a necessity when new garments were expensive and hard to come by. A pair of sharp scissors. You trim the frayed edges of the hole at the knee. Then you select a patch of sturdy cord. A quirky historical tidbit is the existence of traveling menders. These itinerant workers would journey from farm to farm, offering uroi, slightly larger than the hole itself. You tuck the patch inside the trouser leg and begin the slow, methodical process their skills in more complex repairs. Patching leather, restitching heavy canvas, or even mending broken pottery with stitching it into place. Your fingers, though still stiff, are deft and practiced. This is not decorative embroidery, your intricate metal staples. Their arrival was often a welcome event, a chance to have difficult repairs done by an expert. Once stitches are small, tight, and functional, designed to withstand the stress of kneeling, bending, and hard labor. If the mending is complete, you turn your attention to the tools. The knives used in the kitchen and for butchering is slow, painstaking work that requires focus and a steady hand. As you work, the light from the window begins to be sharpened. You get out the whetstone, a rectangular block of fine-grained stone. You pour a little water. The sun, which provided so little warmth, is now sinking towards the horizon, painting the gray sky with pale, washed on its surface, and begin to draw the blade of a large knife across it, holding it at a precise, consistent angle. First out shades of pink and orange. The shadows in the kitchen lengthen. Every minute of usable daylight is precious. This reliance one side, then the other. The sound is a soft, rhythmic shushing, a whisper of steel on stone. It on natural light is a key difference between your life and the modern world. You cannot simply flip a switch to flood the room with light. Is a deeply satisfying sound. The sound of restoring an edge, of making a tool effective again. You sharpen the kitchen. Your work is dictated by the rising and setting of the sun. Once the trousers are mended, a solid, functional knives, the small utility knife you carry in your pocket, and even the blades of the scythe that hangs on the wall, waiting patch covering the weakness, you turn to the socks. Darning is a specific skill, a form of weaving used to repair holes for summer. This focus on maintenance extended to everything. Leather harness for the horse would be cleaned and oiled to keep in knitted garments. You stretch the thin part of the sock over a smooth, mushroom-shaped piece of wood called it supple, and prevent it from cracking in the cold. Wooden tool handles would be checked for splinters and sanded smooth. Nothing darning egg. This holds the fabric taut and gives you a surface to work on. With a long needle and woolen was taken for granted. The idea of a disposable culture would have been utterly alien. Historians who study material culture often marvel yarn. You begin to weave a new patch of fabric directly into the sock, laying down parallel threads in one direction. At the longevity of everyday objects from this era, a simple wooden chair or a cast iron pot might be passed down through generations, and then weaving across them in the other. It is a miniature act of creation, turning a whole into a solid, if its long life a testament to its solid construction and the constant care it received. It was a world of stewardship, not slightly lumpy piece of fabric. A well-darned sock could last for years, its heel a patchwork map of countless repairs. The idea of throwing away a pair of socks because of a single hole would be unthinkable, an act of shocking consumption. As you work, the light from the window begins to fade. The afternoon is waning, the shadows in profligacy. While you are busy with your mending, another member of the household might be engaged in a different kind. The corners of the kitchen grow longer, creeping out from the furniture. The deep orange glow from the firebox becomes more pronounced, casting a warm, dancing light on the floor. You have not made anything new this afternoon. You have not produced of maintenance. Perhaps they are at the table, sharpening tools by the light of the fire. The scythes, sickles, and knives used on the farm need a keen edge to be effective. Using a whetstone, slicked with a crop or earned any cash. But your work has been just as vital. You have pushed back against the forces of entropy. You have taken things that were worn and broken and made them whole and useful again. You have saved money, conserved resources, and ensured little water or oil. They draw the blade across the stone in long, smooth strokes, first on one side, then the other. The scraping sound is rhythmic and hypnotic, a counterpoint to the quiet murmur of the fire. A sharp tool that the tools and clothes you depend on will continue to serve you. This quiet, domestic labor was the invisible engine that kept the rural economy running. It was often unpaid, unrecorded, and uncelebrated, yet without it, the entire means less effort and a cleaner cut, whether it's harvesting hay or butchering a pig. Tool maintenance was not the enterprise of the farm would have quickly fallen into disrepair. You gather up your mending, putting the repaired clothes away a hobby. It was an essential part of the agricultural cycle. This period of indoor work highlights the stark division of labor that you wipe down the whetstone and put it back in its box. The kitchen is tidy, warm, and often existed. While men and women both worked brutally hard, their domains were often, though not always, separated. The secure. But the day is not yet over. The approaching dusk signals the beginning of the final, crucial round of outdoor chores. Outdoor, heavy-lifting tasks might fall to the men, while the indoor work of mending, food preparation, and you must secure the farm for the long, cold night ahead. Just as you are putting away the last of your mending tools, a sound cuts through the quiet rhythm of the afternoon. It is the sound of a voice hailing from the farmyard, followed by the crunch of boots on the frozen ground. A visitor is a rare event, especially in the depths of winter when travel is difficult and unpleasant. Your farm is not on a main road. To come here requires a deliberate journey. The isolation of your life is so profound that the arrival of another human being is a significant disruption, but almost always a welcome one. You go to the back door and open it, squinting against the cold, slanting light of the late afternoon. It is your nearest neighbor, a man named Thomas who farms the next valley over, a good 2-mile walk away. He is a stout figure, bundled in layers of wool and tweed, his face red from the wind, his breath pluming in the air. He is not here for a social call in the modern sense. A visit like this almost always has a purpose, a piece of news to share, a tool to borrow, a bit of business to conduct. You invite him in, and he steps into the warmth of the kitchen, bringing a gust of cold air with him. He stomps his muddy boots on the mat by the door and unwraps the scarf from his neck. "Bitter out," he says, by way of greeting. It is a statement of the obvious, but it is the common ground on which all winter conversations are built. You offer him a seat by the fire, the most honored place in the house, and he sinks onto the wooden chair with a grateful sigh, holding his chapped, red hands out to the heat. The hospitality you offer is simple but sincere. You pour him a mug of hot, sweet tea from a pot that has been brewing on the hob. Sugar is a precious commodity, and offering a sweetened drink is a sign of welcome and respect. For a few minutes, the conversation is sparse, revolving around the weather, the state of the roads, the health of the livestock. This is the ritual of rural conversation, a slow warming up before the real purpose of the visit is revealed. Thomas has come to ask a favor. His prize sow has just given birth to a large litter of piglets, but the sow is weak, and one of the piglets, a runt, is being pushed away, unlikely to survive the night in the cold sty. He asks if you might have any spare milk from your cows to help him try and save it. This is the currency of your community, not money, but mutual support. You know that you may need to ask a similar favor of him next month, perhaps for help mending a fence or for the loan of his stronger horse to pull a fallen tree. Your survival is not just a matter of individual effort. It is woven into this web of interdependence. Of course, you agree. You go to the larder and retrieve a jug of milk from this morning's milking, milk that had been destined for the cream separator. Saving the piglet is more important. The life of that one small animal could mean an extra side of bacon in the larder next year, a significant gain. Thomas thanks you, his relief palpable. While he drinks his tea, he shares the news from the wider world, or at least the wider parish. He has been to the market town and brings gossip. Who is ill? Who is getting married? The price of corn. This is your newspaper, your internet, your social media feed, all delivered by word of mouth. He also brings a piece of more practical news. A particularly harsh spell of weather is forecast, a heavy snowstorm expected in a day or two. This is vital intelligence. It means you must ensure you have enough fuel chopped and brought in, enough animal fodder moved to an accessible place, and all the buildings secured. The arrival of a visitor has not just broken the monotony of the day. It has provided you with crucial information that will affect your actions for the next 24 hours. Historians often debate the extent to which isolated rural communities were truly cut off. While they lacked instant communication, complex and surprisingly efficient informal networks like this one existed to share news, warnings, and support. A shouted word across a field, a message passed by a child on an errand, a visit from a neighbor. These were the threads that held the community's information network together. The existence of these small, tight-knit communities also debunks a common myth of the fiercely independent, self-sufficient farmer. While self-reliance was a prized virtue, total self-sufficiency was a fantasy. No single farm could produce everything it needed. You relied on the blacksmith in the village, the miller for your flour, the weaver for your cloth, and your neighbors for mutual aid in times of crisis or heavy labor. This sense of community was not born of sentimentality, but of a pragmatic understanding that cooperation was the surest path to survival. Loneliness was a real and present danger, but the knowledge that help was only a 2-mile walk away was a profound comfort. Thomas does not stay long. The light is failing fast, and he has a long walk home. You wrap the jug of milk in a piece of sacking to try and keep it from freezing on his journey. He thanks you again, puts on his scarf and cap, and steps back out into the deepening twilight. You watch him for a moment as he trudges away, a small, determined figure against the vast, cold landscape. The kitchen feels quieter, emptier after his departure. The visit has been a brief but important interruption. It has reminded you that you are part of something larger than your own small patch of land. The shared struggle against the winter forges powerful bonds. You are not alone in this fight. As you latch the door, you feel a renewed sense of purpose. The news of the coming snowstorm adds urgency to the evening's tasks. The day is drawing to a close, and there is still much to do to prepare for the night and for the challenges the next day will bring. The departure of your neighbor and the news he brought of an impending snowstorm casts a new urgency over the evening. The transition from day to night is not a gentle one. As the last of the sun's light vanishes from the sky, the temperature plummets. The world outside the farmhouse becomes even more hostile. Your final round of outdoor chores is a race against the darkness and the intensifying cold. This is the process of battening down the hatches, of securing your small kingdom for the long, dark siege of the night. You pull your heavy jacket back on, tug your cap down firmly, and light a hurricane lamp. The lamp, with its glass chimney protecting the flame from the wind, will be your only source of light. You step outside, and the cold hits you with renewed force. The wind seems to have a sharper edge now, and the darkness is gathering quickly in the corners of the yard, thick and absolute. Your small pool of flickering, yellow light from the lantern seems fragile and inadequate against the vastness of the descending night. Your first destination is the chicken coop. The chickens, sensing the failing light, have already returned to their roosts. You do a quick head count, your lantern light dancing over the ruffled, sleeping forms. You scatter a final handful of grain on the floor of the coop for them to find in the morning. Then you secure the door, making sure the latch is firm. Foxes are a constant threat, and their hunting is made easier by the cover of darkness. A loose latch could mean devastation by morning. Next, you move to the cowshed. The cows are already in their stalls, chewing their cud contentedly in the relative warmth. Your main task here is to ensure they have enough water and fodder to last through the night. You top up their mangers with a final forkful of hay from the rick. The air in the shed is thick with the sweet smell of hay and the warm, animal scent of the cattle. It is a peaceful, domestic scene, a stark contrast to the bitter cold outside. Before you leave, you run your hands along the flank of each cow, a quick check for any signs of illness or distress. They are your most valuable assets, and their health is paramount. You slide the heavy wooden door shut, the sound echoing in the quiet yard. Now you must bring in the farm's other animals. The few sheep you keep, which have been grazing in a sheltered pasture nearby, must be brought into a protective fold for the night. You walk to the edge of the field, the lantern light bobbing in front of you, and give a low, familiar call. The sheep, dark shapes in the gloom, gather and begin to move towards you. You guide them into the stone-walled sheepfold, a three-sided enclosure that will protect them from the worst of the wind. With the news of snow, this is especially critical. A sheep caught in a snowdrift can be buried and suffocate. The final, and perhaps most important, part of securing the farm is checking the physical structures. You walk the perimeter of the farmhouse and the outbuildings, your lantern held high. You are looking for anything that the wind might catch. A loose shutter, a piece of roofing tile that has slipped, a gate not properly latched. A strong winter gale could tear a loose shutter from its hinges or rip a sheet of corrugated iron from a roof, causing damage that would be difficult and expensive to repair. This preventative maintenance is crucial. A popular misconception is that rural life was simpler. In reality, it required a constant, high level of vigilance and a deep, practical knowledge of how weather and the elements interact with the built environment. You are not just a farmer. You are a caretaker, an engineer, and a security guard for your small domain. You find a shutter on an upstairs window that is rattling in the wind. You must secure it. Propping the lantern on the ground, you climb onto a sturdy wooden barrel to reach it, your fingers fumbling with the cold iron latch in the darkness. You finally manage to secure it, the rattling silenced. You are satisfied. Everything is as secure as you can make it. Your last act before returning to the house is to bring in one final, large basket of logs from the woodshed. This will be the night's fuel, enough to keep the fire banked and ready for the morning. You load the canvas carrier until it is heavy and awkward, and make one last trip into the blessed warmth of the kitchen. You close and bolt the heavy back door. The sound of the bolt sliding home is one of finality. The outside world, with its wind, its cold, and its darkness, is now shut out. You are sealed in your sanctuary for the night. The kitchen is a haven of warmth and light. The fire in the range glows brightly, the kettle hums, and the air is filled with the scent of wood smoke and the simmering stew. The contrast between the inside and the outside is absolute. It is a feeling of safety and security that is earned, not given. You stand for a moment in the center of the room, the lantern still in your hand, and feel the deep, bone-weary satisfaction of a day's work completed. Every animal is safe and fed. The house is secure. There is fuel for the fire and food for the pot. You have done everything in your power to prepare for the night and the storm to come. The struggle is relentless, but for now, there is a truce. The farm is asleep, and soon you will be too. The long day is finally drawing to its close. With the farm secured and the door bolted against the night, a quiet stillness settles over the farmhouse. The frantic pace of the day gives way to the slow, hushed rhythm of the evening. This is a time of winding down, of rest, but not of idleness. The work is done, but the evening has its own gentle, necessary rituals. The world outside has been conquered for another day, and now you retreat fully into the small, warm circle of light and life you have so carefully maintained. The first order of business is the evening meal. Supper is a simple affair, often a continuation of the midday meal. You lift the heavy lid from the perpetual stew pot on the side of the range. The aroma that rises is even richer and more complex than it was at lunchtime, the flavors having deepened over hours of slow simmering. You give it a stir and ladle generous portions into bowls. Tonight, you might add something extra, a small luxury to supplement the stew. Perhaps you will boil a few of the eggs you collected this morning, or fry a few pieces of salty bacon, the fat sizzling and popping in a pan on the hot stove top, filling the kitchen with its irresistible scent. You sit down at the wooden table to eat. The only light in the room now comes from two sources: the warm, orange glow from the firebox of the range, and the single oil lamp you have lit and placed in the center of the table. The lamp casts a pool of steady, yellow light, but it is not powerful. The corners of the room remain shrouded in deep shadow. This low, flickering light transforms the familiar kitchen into a place of mystery and intimacy. It is a world away from the bright, even light of the modern age. Life was lived in pools of light surrounded by darkness, a reality that shaped everything from social habits to eyesight. A quirky but true fact is that many people, especially as they aged, suffered from poor night vision, not just due to nutrition, but from a lifetime of straining their eyes in insufficient light. You eat your supper slowly, savoring the warmth and the flavor. The conversation is quiet if there is any at all. The exhaustion of the day settles in, a heavy, pleasant weight in your limbs. The meal is not just about replenishing calories. It is a time to quietly reconnect, to share the small space of warmth and light before the separation of sleep. You might discuss the news the neighbor brought, making plans for the coming snow. You might talk about the health of a particular animal or a tool that needs a more serious repair. The talk is practical, rooted in the realities of your life. After the meal, the washing up is done with the last of the hot water from the kettle. The bowls and pans are scrubbed, dried, and put away. The kitchen is tidied, everything returned to its proper place, ready for the morning. This routine is comforting, a way of drawing a line under the day and preparing for the next. The hours after supper are the quietest of all. There is no television to watch, no internet to scroll through. Entertainment is simple, self-made, and often practical. This might be the time for more mending, for knitting new socks or mittens, or for reading. A home like yours might own only a handful of books: a Bible, a farmer's almanac, and perhaps a well-loved novel by Dickens or Hardy, its pages soft and worn with repeated readings. You might read aloud by the light of the lamp, the sound of your voice a solitary human noise in the vast, silent night. Or you might simply sit and stare into the fire, a timeless human pastime, your mind drifting and quiet. The sounds of the house are different at night. You are more aware of the sigh and creak of the old timbers as the house settles. The wind's relentless moan outside the window is a constant, brooding presence. Occasionally, a gust will send a puff of smoke down the chimney, and the fire will hiss and flicker. You might hear a faint stirring from the cowshed, a low moo carrying on the wind. These are the sounds of your world at night, a soundscape that is both deeply familiar and slightly eerie. As the evening wears on, the warmth in the kitchen begins to concentrate around the stove. The rest of the house grows colder and colder, surrendering once more to the dominion of the winter night. The thought of the journey back to your frigid bedroom begins to loom. But there is one last, crucial task to perform before you can retreat. A task that is an investment in tomorrow's comfort, an act of faith in the coming dawn. The fire, which has been the center of your world all day, must be prepared for its long, lonely vigil through the night. It is time to bank the embers, a ritual that holds the promise of the next day's warmth in its smoky heart. The circle of the day is almost complete, ending as it began with the fire. The final act of the waking day is a ritual steeped in ancient knowledge, a careful and deliberate procedure that bridges the gap between this evening's warmth and the next morning's survival. It is time to bank the fire. The goal is not to keep it roaring through the night. That would be a wasteful and dangerous use of precious fuel. The goal is the opposite: to subdue the fire, to put it into a state of suspended animation, so that a living core of embers will remain in the morning, ready to be resurrected. You begin by opening the firebox door one last time. The heat that washes over you is still intense. The hardwood logs you added earlier have burned down to a deep, glowing bed of charcoal, and the coal beneath is a solid mass of radiant heat. This is the heart of the fire you need to preserve. Using the long iron poker, you carefully move the largest, most vibrant embers to the center of the firebox, creating a concentrated core of heat. You push the smaller, fading embers and the ash to the sides. Next, you add the fuel for the night. This is not the dry, quick-burning wood you use during the day. You might use a large, dense log of a hardwood like oak or beech, preferably one that is not fully seasoned. A greener log will not burst into flame but will smolder slowly, consuming itself at a glacial pace. More commonly, you would use coal. You take a shovel and carefully layer what is known as coal slack or dross over the glowing embers. This is a mixture of fine coal dust and small chips, a byproduct of the larger lumps. It is less expensive and perfect for this job. You cover the embers completely, creating a thick, dark blanket over the glowing heart of the fire. The final and most critical step is to cover this layer of coal slack with a layer of ash. You take the ash pan from beneath the fire grate, the ash you so carefully cleared this morning, and you scoop some of the fine gray powder onto the shovel. You then gently, carefully, spread this ash over the top of the coal slack. This layer of ash acts as a superb insulator. It traps the heat in the core of the fire, and most importantly, it severely restricts the flow of oxygen. By starving the fire of air, you prevent it from burning freely. It will not go out. It will smolder, a slow, flameless combustion that can last for 8 to 10 hours. You close the firebox door and then carefully adjust the dampers, closing them down to an absolute minimum, allowing only the tiniest sliver of air to be drawn up the chimney. This prevents the fire from flaring up and also stops precious warmth from the room from being sucked away into the night sky. The roaring sound of the fire you have heard all day subsides, replaced by an almost total silence. The beast has been tamed, put to sleep. This process of banking a fire was a universal skill in the age of solid fuel heating, and it was a source of great pride to do it well. A poorly banked fire could mean one of two disasters. It could go out completely, forcing you to start from scratch with kindling and cold ashes in the freezing morning, a demoralizing and difficult task. Or, even worse, it could fail to be properly subdued, flaring up in the middle of the night and setting the chimney ablaze. A terrifying and potentially fatal event. Chimney fires were a common winter hazard in the Edwardian countryside. The sticky soot, or creosote from wood and coal fires, would build up inside the flue, and an overly hot fire could ignite it, turning the chimney into a roaring inferno. Historians studying household management from this period can find detailed instructions in domestic manuals and almanacs on the precise art of banking a fire, with different techniques for different types of fuel and stoves. It was considered a core competency of a well-run household. There was no smoke detector to warn you of danger, only your own skill and attentiveness. You stand for a moment listening. You can hear nothing. You place a hand on the iron of the range. It is still radiating a powerful heat, a reservoir that will slowly bleed into the room for a few hours before the cold begins to reclaim its territory. The fire is banked. The last active duty of the day is done. The kitchen, lit now only by the dying glow of the single oil lamp, feels like a different place. It is quiet, expectant. The shadows are deep and impenetrable. The silence is profound, broken only by the ever-present sound of the wind outside. You extinguish the oil lamp, plunging the room into near-total darkness, save for the faint red cracks of light around the firebox door. Now you must face the final journey of the day, the return to the cold bedroom. It is a journey you make with reluctance. You leave the relative comfort of the kitchen, stepping into the frigid, damp air of the hallway and then climbing the stairs. Each step takes you further from the warmth, deeper into the cold that has already reclaimed the rest of the house. You have done all you can. You have worked from before dawn until long after dusk. You have fed and protected your animals, your family, and your home. You have fought the winter to a standstill for one more day. Now, all that is left is to surrender to the cold and to sleep, trusting that the tiny, sleeping heart of the fire you so carefully preserved will be there to greet you in the morning. You open the door to your bedroom, and the cold embraces you like an old, unwelcome friend. It is just as you left it this morning, a frigid, silent space, rendered in shades of gray and black by the weak moonlight filtering through the frosted window pane. The air is so cold it feels thin, sharp in your lungs. The brief period of warmth you experienced by the kitchen fire feels like a distant memory, a temporary loan that has now been brutally recalled. The floorboards are like slabs of ice beneath your stockinged feet as you cross the room. There is no slow disrobing, no casual preparation for bed. Movement is swift and economical, driven by the desperate need to get under the covers before the deep chill can settle into your bones. You shed your outer layers of day clothes, the heavy trousers and pullover, and lay them on the chair, ready for the morning's battle. You will sleep in the same woolen, long underwear you have worn all day. It holds the faint, residual warmth of your own body, a pathetic but vital defense against the cold of the bedsheets. Changing into a thin, cold nightgown or pajamas would be an act of self-inflicted torture. You approach the bed. It stands like a monolithic tomb in the center of the room. The sheets, will be icy cold and feel slightly damp to the touch, having absorbed the moisture from the frigid air all day. This is the final challenge, the last shock to the system. You pull back the heavy mountain of blankets, quilts, and the thick bed rug you placed there this morning. A wave of air even colder than the room's ambient temperature seems to rise from the linens. You don't hesitate. You slide into the bed in one quick, fluid motion, pulling the covers up to your chin immediately. The shock is visceral. The sheets suck the warmth from your skin with an almost audible leaching sound. Your entire body tenses, an involuntary clench against the profound cold. You curl into a tight ball, trying to minimize your surface area, to create and protect a small pocket of air that your body can begin to warm. Shivering racks your frame, an uncontrollable, teeth-rattling tremor. This is not the gentle shiver of being a little chilly. This is a deep, convulsive response of a body fighting to generate heat. This nightly ordeal is one of the great unspoken hardships of life before central heating. The cozy, romantic image of piling under quilts in a charming farmhouse bedroom belies the genuinely unpleasant, and even dangerous, reality of entering a bed that is near freezing temperature. For the elderly, the frail, or the very young, this nightly shock to the system could be perilous. One of the few creature comforts the more well-to-do might possess was a bed warmer, a long-handled brass or copper pan that would be filled with hot coals from the fire and passed between the sheets to take the edge off the cold. But for you, your own body is the only bed warmer you have. You lie still in the darkness, listening. The wind howls around the corners of the house, a lonely, keening sound. The old house groans and settles, its timbers complaining under the immense pressure of the cold. There are no other sounds. No traffic, no sirens, no hum of electronics. The silence is as deep and as vast as the darkness. You are an island of shivering life in a vast, sleeping, frozen world. Slowly, very slowly, the shivering begins to subside. Your body heat, trapped by the immense weight of the wool blankets and heavy quilts, begins to create a small sanctuary of warmth. The initial, shocking cold of the sheets gives way to a neutral coolness, and then, finally, to a pocket of genuine comfort. You can uncurl your limbs, stretch out cautiously, exploring the boundaries of your small thermal bubble. It is a profound, almost primal feeling of relief. You have survived the day. You are safe. You are warm. You are one day closer to spring. That is the thought that sustains you. Each day survived is a victory, a notch on the calendar, a step closer to the thaw. You don't think in terms of weeks or months. You think in terms of the next sunrise. You think of the first snowdrops that will push through the frozen ground, the first sight of green shoots in the pasture, the first day you can work outside without your breath turning to frost. Spring is not just a season. It is a promise of liberation. It is the light at the end of the long, dark tunnel of winter. Your body, heavy with the day's labor, begins to relax completely. Your mind, which has been occupied all day with the calculus of survival, finally begins to quiet. The worries about the coming snow, the health of the animals, the dwindling fuel pile, they all recede, replaced by the deep, gravitational pull of exhaustion. Sleep comes not as a gentle drift, but as a heavy, welcome blanket smothering the last of your thoughts. You fall asleep in the profound silence of the countryside, under a sky filled with a spray of cold, brilliant stars that you cannot see. In a house that is your fortress and your prison, you sleep the deep, dreamless sleep of the truly tired, gathering your strength to do it all again tomorrow. And as you drift now, far from that cold Devonshire farmhouse, in the comfort and warmth of your own bed, take a moment to appreciate the quiet miracle of your own surroundings. The silence in your room is not the silence of isolation, but of peace. The warmth that cocoons you is not a hard-won, temporary victory, but a steady, reliable presence you can command with the touch of a button. The struggles of the past cast a long shadow, but they also illuminate the comforts of the present. The resilience of those who endured such hardships is a quiet testament to the human spirit's ability to adapt, to endure, and to always look for the coming of spring. Their fight is over. Their echoes whisper of a strength we all carry within us. Let those echoes of the past sing you to sleep, a lullaby of endurance, a story of quiet triumph. Allow yourself to let go of the day, to sink into the deep, restorative peace that you have earned. The night is quiet, you are safe, and you can rest.